good afternoon. It is Thursday, March 14th. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. Argentinian Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio begins his first day as the 266th Pope, the first ever non-European pontiff in 1,300 years. Delegations from the March 14 opposition visit the gravesites of the martyrs of Lebanon's Syria revolution on the movement's 8th anniversary. And Syria prepares to mark the second anniversary of the ongoing bloody conflict against the rule of President Bashar al-Assad. Habemus Papam, meaning we have a pope. Those were the Latin words pronounced by Cardinal Jean-Louis Touron to announce the election of Argentinian Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio as the 266th Pope and the first ever non-European pontiff in nearly 1,300 years. Francis was elected yesterday on the second day of the conclave in Vatican City after receiving the required two-thirds majority, or at least 77 votes of the 115 cardinal electors from 48 countries. The news of announcement was met with cheers from hundreds of thousands of crowd gathered at St. Peter's Square in Rome. Pope Francis, who is 76 years old, appeared on the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica just over an hour after white smoke poured from a chimney on the roof of the Sistine Chapel to signal his election. He arrived at his central Rome Basilica today to pray as he began his first day as head of the Roman Catholic Church. So we're looking at some reactions from around the world. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon congratulated the new Pope in a video message broadcast from the UN headquarters in New York City.
I offer my heartfelt congratulations to Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio of Buenos Aires, Argentina, has taken the name Pope Francis on his assumption of the papacy, and to all Catholics across the world on this momentous occasion. I look forward to continuing cooperation between the United Nations and the Holy See under the wise leadership of His Holiness Pope Francis. We share many common goals, from the promotion of peace, social justice, and human rights to the eradication of poverty and hunger, all core elements of sustainable development. We also share the conviction that we can only resolve the interconnected challenges of today's world by dialogue. I am certain that His Holiness will continue to build on the legacy of his predecessor, Pope Benedict XVI, in the promotion of interfaith dialogue, which is at the heart of the Alliance of Civilization initiative.
Cheering crowds greeted the newly elected Pope Francis with tears and joy as he appeared on the balcony over St. Peter's Square yesterday. Here are some reactions from people at the Vatican and around the world.
It was a special night. It was so emotional, and it's just amazing. He's going to be a good leader for the youth to get the church younger and, you know, more involved.
It was so great to see him come out, to see him greet us with such humility, with such happiness. I think it was great that he took a moment to pray with us.
Really impressed by what he said when he came out on the loggia. I was impressed by his humility, his simplicity in presenting himself, and especially in the fact that he asked the blessing of the people. And also he's presenting himself as the Bishop of Rome. So, I mean, he looked to me like a parish priest.
First, I'm coming here and discover all this about it, and he's a really good man. Like, I know I've been to masses with him and all of that kind of stuff. I'm sorry, I'm quite trembling. Like, I don't know what to say.
I mean, this is the first year that I've really been aware of the new Pope. I was too young, really, in 2005 for Pope Benedict, so this is the first time to really experience the whole conclave atmosphere. So it's a very exciting time, with right in the middle of Lent and everything. I think it's huge because the Catholic Church is really expanding worldwide. So I think we need somebody either from South America or Africa or somewhere new.
Lebanese President Michel Sleiman hailed the recent election of the new Pope to head the Catholic Church. He said the Pope's election was a historical moment for the world. and congratulated Argentina, where there is an important Lebanese community. Speaking to the Lebanese community in Senegal, Slimane described Pope Francis as the Pope of the poor and the man of change, and hoped his election would be a blessing. The president is heading to Ivory Coast today on the second leg of his West African tour. He will also visit Nigeria and Ghana. On another note, former Prime Minister Saad Hariri also congratulated Pope Francis on his election as the new pontiff. Delegations from the March 14 opposition coalition visited the grave sites of the martyrs of Lebanon's Cedar Revolution on the 8th anniversary of the movement. Officials from the alliance laid flowers at their graves in different areas in Lebanon. Internal Security Forces Intelligence Branch Chief Wissam al-Hassan was the latest of some dozen anti-Syrian Lebanese politicians and members of the security to be killed since February 2005, when former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri was assassinated in a truck bomb at Beirut's seafront. Today's event will be culminated by a gathering near Hariri's grave at Mohammed al-Amin Mosque in downtown Beirut at 3:30 p.m. Interior Minister Marwan Sharbil says Lebanon's civil peace requires that rival parties remain committed to the Babda Declaration and engage in dialogue. Sharbil issued his statements during his visit to Saudi Arabia, where he attended the meeting of Arab interior ministers. He added the security problems amid sectarian division should be solved wisely in order to prevent the country from falling into chaos. Tensions rose after future bloc officials refused to hold talks with Hezbollah following the assassination of Internal Security Forces Intelligence Chief Wissam al-Hassan back in October. Sharbil also praised security forces for overcoming several obstacles and achieving the required results despite the delicate situation in the country. The Syndicate Coordination Committee the open-ended strike enters its 24th consecutive day as protesters block several roads across the country. Angry demonstrators have staged a wide demonstration near Beirut's port and headed to Zaytuna Bay after speeches by SEC officials. They are set to hold another protest on Friday near Beirut's Rafiq Hariri International Airport. And SEC official Hanna Ghari pointed out that the state can fund the new salary scale by ending corruption at Beirut's port. The protesters held banners criticizing the government and calling on it to refer the new wage scale for public employees to the parliament. Iran has ratcheted up its military support for Bashar al-Assad's regime, transferring weapons across both Lebanon and Iraq to Syria. Western diplomats revealed that Iran may be trying to end the battlefield stalemate by redoubling its commitment to Assad. Envoy said on condition of anonymity that Iranian arms are flowing to Hezbollah as the Shia group becomes increasingly active on the ground in Syria. The arms were distributed to government forces and allied militia, including Hezbollah, according to a source. It cited a Western intelligence report as saying that Iraq denies the reports, with Iraqi PM Nouri al-Maliki's media advisor saying, quote, weapons did not and will not be transferred from Iran to Syria through Iraq, whether by land or by air. Syria is to mark the second anniversary of the ongoing bloody uprising against the rule of President Bashar al-Assad. The two-year-old conflict now started out as a pro-democracy protest, but has since descended into an increasingly sectarian war between rebels, mainly from Syria's Sunni Muslim majority, and forces loyal to Assad who follow the Alawite faith derived from Shia's Islam. Some 70,000 people have been killed and more than 1 million refugees have fled the violence. Syria's unrest began on March 15, 2011, when around 40 people joined a rare political protest in Old Damascus, chanting slogans and a brief first challenge to the ruling Ba'ath Party. By the end of last year, at least 2.5 million Syrians had been displaced internally, with another 1 million seeking refuge in neighboring countries, notably Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey. French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius says France and Britain are prepared to arm Syrian rebels, even without unanimous EU support. He told reporters that France and Britain will ask other EU countries to lift the embargo so that the resistance fighters have the possibility of defending themselves. Fabius warned French and British governments will decide to deliver weapons if unanimous EU support for lifting the measure is lacking. Meanwhile, Prime Minister David Cameron backed the stance and said that Britain would consider ignoring an EU arms ban and supplying weapons to Syrian rebels if it would help topple President Assad. Coming up next, a traveling dog circus in Japan promotes the adoption of furry friends for little children. Stay with us. Welcome back. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu clinched deals for a coalition government reflecting a shift to the center in Israel and a domestic agenda that has shunted peacemaking with the Palestinians to the sidelines. In control of 68 of Parliament's 120 seats, the right-wing leader's new administration is expected to take office next week, just days before a visit by U.S. President Barack Obama, his first to Israel since entering the White House. On the streets of Jerusalem, reaction to the coalition were mixed. Some voiced concern that it wouldn't work, and others voiced hope that the government's mix of coalition partners from opposing sides would be able to work together. Netanyahu is expected to turn his attention again to the Palestinian issue and Iran's nuclear drive in his talks with Obama. And speaking of Obama, well, the president named a new ambassador to Libya 6 months after the previous U.S. envoy was killed in an attack by fighters in Benghazi in September. The announcement that career diplomat Deborah Jones is set to replace slain ambassador Chris Stevens comes as the Libyan Prime Minister Ali Zaidan was in Washington for talks with senior officials. Zaidan vowed, as he met later with Secretary of State John Kerry, that the Libyan government will work with the United States of America in order to find out who were behind the assassination on the Benghazi compound. Now we look at news in brief. A series of blasts in the center of the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, kills at least 18 people. Police and medics say the explosions wounded at least 50. The blast went off near the Ministries of Culture and Foreign Affairs and near an office of the Ministry of Communications in the Alawi neighborhood. On another note, a bombing targeted a candidate in Iraq's upcoming provincial elections, while another was kidnapped along with his father and other relatives. Some species of shark and manta ray are to get greater international protection following an agreement at the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora meeting in Bangkok. Those of the 177 CITES members countries will now require strictly controlled permits to export the fins. Countries will need to issue export permits to those trading in water species, and some have agreed to issue annual quotas to keep track of sustainability. Those receiving permits will need to prove their fishing is sustainable. China's new leader Xi Jinping caps his rise by adding the largely ceremonial title of president, though he will need cautious maneuvering to consolidate his power and build support from a public that is increasingly clamoring for change. The elevation of Xi to the presidency by the rubber-stamped national legislature gave him the last of the 3 titles held by his predecessor Hu Jintao. And Japanese elementary school children enjoy a dynamic performance by a troupe of unwanted dogs when the Wow Wow Dog Circus came through town with the aim of educating the youngsters on the responsibilities of pet ownership. Beginning with a short 10-minute speech about dog shelters and statistics on the numbers of canines abandoned each year in Japan, organizers provided the young attendants with both education and entertainment. In Japan, 100,000 dogs are abandoned and destroyed every year. Little poochies. That marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Argentinian Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio begins his first day as the 266th Pope, the first ever non-European pontiff in nearly 1,300 years. Delegations from the March 14 opposition coalition visit the gravesites of the martyrs of Lebanon's Cedar Revolution on the movement's 8th anniversary. Syria prepares to mark the 2nd anniversary of the ongoing bloody uprising against President Bashar al-Assad. A lot of anniversaries today. Well, those were your Thursday headlines. I'll see you again tomorrow for all the latest in around the Lebanon and around the world. Take care.